In today's video, we're going to look at what you can say and do if your partner wants to talk about women's rights. Now, these conversations can be surprisingly challenging and uncomfortable, even if your partner means well and genuinely wants to learn. If they don't, or if they have strong and uncomfortable or even just factually wrong views about the role of women and what it's like to live in this world as a woman, those conversations can be downright awful. So what can or should you say, and what can you reasonably hope to achieve from these kinds of conversations? By the end of this video, you're going to feel much better equipped to have these conversations and to understand how to set boundaries around how they're conducted. You're going to feel empowered, and you might even be able to help change some minds if you want to. And if you're having any other struggles in your relationship, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and get notified about all the best tips and advice as soon as we post our videos. So, what do you need to consider when you're deciding how to respond to these conversations or debates? Well, the first thing to ask yourself is whether the person you're talking to is actually operating in good faith. Are they genuinely interested in listening to you, understanding more about the topic, and exploring new thoughts and ideas? Or are they just trying to start a debate so that they can win? But if that's the case, you're probably not looking for tips for what to say. You've got it covered, and all I can say is go get 'em, love. Have fun. If you realize that someone is trying to start a debate about women's rights or experiences in bad faith, especially if it's your partner or someone who is supposed to love you, the best bet is actually to say it exactly as it is. Explain that you don't want to discuss this with them because you don't think that they actually want to listen to what you have to say, and you don't find conflict about this enjoyable. This is an important bit of boundary setting, and I would actually deploy the big T word here: trust. Try saying, "I'm sorry, but I don't trust you to discuss this in a way that doesn't hurt my feelings." If they try to insist, you can say, "I've told you before that I don't want to discuss this with you. If I can't trust you to respect that boundary, I can't trust you to talk about this in a way that's kind and respectful." They'll be a bit offended, but frankly, that's okay. They're perfectly happy to upset and offend you. If the truth is uncomfortable to them, they should probably try behaving better. That's the worst case. Let's assume that you do think that they want to discuss it in good faith and that they are willing to listen and learn. What are the things that they still might say that are going to make you feel uncomfortable or that are going to make the conversation harder, and how can you reply? The first one is, "I'm just playing devil's advocate." Now, I have really strong feelings about someone saying that they're just playing devil's advocate. And those feelings can broadly be summarized as no, nope, no way. I simply don't allow it. When someone says that they're playing devil's advocate, they're saying that they want to say something that they think is going to be difficult for you to argue against, but they don't want to be held accountable for actually believing or saying it. Saying, "I'm just playing devil's advocate," is a way of saying, "I'm going to say something that you have to take seriously and deal with, but I'm not going to take any responsibility for it." I have a standard reply to this, which you are more than welcome to steal. When someone says, "I'm just playing devil's advocate," say, "I'm just going to stop you right there. I don't allow that. The devil has enough lawyers and he doesn't need you. If you think it's true and you're happy to take responsibility for it, then say it as yourself. You don't need to be the devil's lawyer. If that's what you believe, say it. If it's not, keep silent." Now, that's quite a confrontational way of dealing with the situation, but actually it's a really useful boundary, because when someone says, "I'm playing devil's advocate," what they're actually doing is they are assuming your consent to simply give up all responsibility in themselves. And that is not okay, and I don't consent to that. So it's a really good way of stopping them in their tracks. And someone who says, "I'm just playing devil's advocate," is expecting to get away with it. They will almost never have been called out and have someone say, "Nope, I'm not allowing it." And that's a really powerful tool, and it really sets the tone for the conversation, because as we're about to go into, sometimes they'll try to maneuver the conversation in ways that simply aren't okay. And our job is to stop them in their tracks and pull them back to having a civilized, meaningful conversation. The next thing that they might say is something along the lines of, Okay, but talking hypothetically, or on an academic level, or, well, I don't want to get drawn down into personal experiences. Now, this is another one that I simply will not allow when we're talking about women's rights or the challenges that women face in our society. Unless I'm talking to an academic in the field of gender studies, I am not quite sure why guys seem to think that they're likely to be equipped to talk about this at an academic or theoretical level. They haven't got academic training about it. They're not going to help. They don't actually want to talk about this as an academic level. They just don't want to have to deal with the descriptions of your actual, genuine life experiences, partly because they don't have anything equivalent that they can bring to the table. Now, I don't think that this is something they should be able to impose on you, and I don't think you should allow it. When they say that, I tend to reply with something along the lines of, nope, I understand that to you, this is a theoretical conversation, but that actually only goes to highlight a lot of the problem here and the imbalances between us. You're discussing a theoretical problem, but I'm describing real problems that I really face in my real life. And I'm not interested in talking about abstracts. I'm interested in discussing how we, together, can help deal with a serious problem that I face every day of my life and that affects my income, my physical safety, my emotional well-being, and every other part of my life. And my experiences have to be a part of that conversation. I hope you can understand that. Again, they probably won't like it, but they're going to accept that, or the conversation just ends. The next thing they might say is, yeah, but men have problems too. This one's a big one, mostly because they're not actually wrong. The patriarchy and strict gender roles, and indeed all of the other things that feminists complain about, harm men as well. A social structure that confines us by gender confines all of us. Guys have a slightly comfier cage, all things considered, in my opinion. But they're not the enemy. We should all be in this together. But this argument is a form of something called whataboutism. This is when someone doesn't want to talk about the issue that you're currently talking about, and so they criticize you for not devoting your time and energy into helping to solve a different problem. For example, sure, rape is bad, but what about all of those men who are the victim of false accusations? Now, there's a whole host of things to deal with there, starting from the fact that they're typically equating a tarnished reputation with having your body violated and going downhill from that. But even without those problems with the statement, we need to stop whataboutism in its tracks. So how do we do that? Well, it's surprisingly simple. You point out that that's a separate issue and you're happy to talk about it at a later point, but right now we're talking about this. So if you're talking about a lack of maternity pay and they say, yeah, but what about all those dads who can't get custody because they're the dad rather than the mum? You can say, sure, I agree that there is absolutely a problem there, but that's not the problem we're currently talking about. We can talk about that at a later point, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, whatever. But for now, that's just a distraction. So let's focus on the topic we started with, because I really feel like we're getting somewhere here. Now, in my experience, what happens is that they will keep trying to pivot to a different topic where men are the victims. And I just say the same thing, ideally word for word, until they get the message. A little bit passive-aggressive using the same phrasing, but it's effective. I might also say, not all men. Yep, we've all heard this one. Now, there is a strategy that should avoid this defense ever coming up, but it won't. And that strategy is a little bit appeasing him, but it's also just being accurate. Try to avoid using the words all men, or even just men. Try using most men, or many men, or some men. Should we need to soften what we say this much? Probably not. But if it makes the person we're talking to more willing to listen, I think it's often quite helpful. Might also say, you just don't want to listen to me, or you won't believe anything that I say because I'm a guy. Now, this defense comes out when he's starting to realize that he's not the expert in this conversation, and he's not happy about it. I try to adopt a slightly softer tone with this one because it's usually coming from a place of shock and hurt. He might honestly not understand why his views aren't being given equal weight. And it genuinely feels unfair to him. Admittedly, I will chuckle about it in private later because there is some genuine pathos in a grown-ass man feeling hard done by because he's not going to be deferred to about what it's like to be a woman. But I'm not going to make him feel worse by letting him see it. That said, I'm still not going to let him get away with it. My response is usually something along the lines of, you're talking about what it's like to experience life as a woman, how women are treated, and some of the challenges. I'm genuinely interested in your thoughts, but if they don't match with my actual experience of being a woman, my experiences and the perspectives that I've gained as a result are going to take precedence. Next thing he might say is that women need to get their house in order too, or that there are evil women as well. These are two closely related arguments, and they're actually close relatives of whataboutism. You can see how there's quite a close connection there. What's happening here is that he, possibly not consciously, expects women to take responsibility for fixing all of the problems caused by gender imbalances. The argument typically goes something like, well, women want ABC, but women also do XYZ. Just as an aside, you'll often notice that the ABC that women want might cover 80 to 90% of women, and the XYZ that women do might only include 3 to 4% of women. But that's not the best argument to make to shut this one down. It's usually then followed up with, if women want men to change, then they need to get their own house in order first. There's a relatively simple response to this, and it goes something along the lines of, okay, sure. So we'll both get our own houses in order and everything will be fine. So women will be responsible for fixing the XYZ that you mentioned, and men can be responsible for fixing the gender pay gap, violence against women and girls, sexual harassment in public places, the unequal distribution of domestic labor, gender inequality on company boards and in politics, and everything else that feminists are currently working towards. I mean, I'm not sure you're getting a better deal here. I would then go on to explain that we all only have a finite amount of energy. And as women, we're going to devote our energy to fixing the biggest problems that we face. If guys have problems that they want fixed, and believe me, we know about the problems, we think they need fixing too, but they need to lead the charge on those issues. And we are more than happy to operate as backing vocals. They simply can't expect us to take on all of the world's problems while they play Call of Duty. Now, so far, this video has been quite confrontational, which isn't my normal style for having a conversation with your partner. And that's because these are what I think of as conversational self-defense tactics. We use them when someone's being dishonest or disingenuous in a conversation to try to back us into a corner that we don't deserve, or that they're trying to shut down conversation on really important topics. I still think that you should maintain all of the usual things that you aim for in a conversation with your beloved. That means being curious about his viewpoint, asking questions about his understanding to help you understand him better, rather than as some kind of gotcha. Acknowledging when you've made a mistake, because we all do. Being kind and loving, treating him and his thoughts with respect, being honest about your views, creating a safe space for both of you to be honest about what you think and feel. Those should be over 90% of your conversation. I just wanted to give you some tools to help you deal with the other 10% of... Now that's our video on what to say when your partner wants to debate women's rights. What do you think? What are the things that a partner has said that's been hard for you to deal with? And which of these tips are you going to use? Let me know in the comments. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to make sure that you get all the best advice.